for your kind introduction. Coming from an institution whose job approval is lower than cockroaches, I really appreciate the kind words this morning. And you know, really I'm here because our office and Ann's office at the Export Assistance Center have been a great team over the last 6 years. I've been directly involved with 3 trade missions. I see some veterans of those trips here in the room, which has resulted in really concrete outcomes and results in terms of business and new jobs. And I could rattle off names of companies both in the 2nd District, but frankly in other parts of the state that have benefited from these efforts. And you know, looking at our state, which is a state my family goes back 3 generations, you know, it's got incredible strengths. I still adamantly believe, but there's no question that we're a small state, and if we're going to grow, we have to look outside our borders, not just in terms of the domestic market, but also the international market. And if you look, frankly, as a nation, you know, the real growth is going to be outside the borders of this country, and it is a pro-growth strategy, an export-led focus, I think, is really critical in terms of, again, making sure that we continue to succeed as a nation. And Ann gets that. She, again, I think, as someone with a small business background, really understands the fact that for a lot of smaller businesses, which I know are represented in this room, you know, the export environment can be somewhat scary in terms of dealing with different countries' legal structures, language, currency, etc. And the nice thing about today's event is that we're dealing with probably about the friendliest nation really on the planet in terms of American companies doing business. You know, there really, I think, is such an incredible opportunity to really, for both sides, to really you know, benefit from economic growth because of the fact that we share so much. And that really, even in the trips that we took to the Middle East and to the EU and to the UK, frankly, is not as obvious. And so, again, I want to thank the Consul General for reaching out to Connecticut, organizing this event here today. Your staff obviously has done a great job in terms of you know, planning and organizing this event with some, you know, really strong companies that are here today. And the thing that I've learned about these trade missions and these other events here at Shipman and Goodwin is that, you know, these tend to be just the first step. I mean, you know, there may be some really great outcomes today, which would be awesome. But the fact is that it's a process that you have to build on over time. And we've got, again, someone in Ann that will make sure that that process gets all the help that it possibly can, and certainly my office will do everything we can to work with Ann and with all of you to make sure that this event today, which will cover, I think, a whole broad range of sectors, but obviously energy being the primary focus. And sometimes we find that even companies internally connect and do business together, you know, will be, again, a successful event for all of us. So thank you all for being here today. Thank you to the Canadian officials that are here and companies that are here, and thank you particularly to my buddy Ann Evans for organizing this event. Thank you very much.
Thank you for those kind remarks, and welcome and good morning to everyone. So I think a morning that's going to be very productive and very exciting and certainly interesting as you meet some of the most incredible energy companies, not only in Canada, but in the world. I want to sincerely thank some people this morning, particularly the U.S. Commercial Services at the Department of Commerce, especially Richard Steffens, who I met well over a year ago in my office to discuss opportunities between both our countries to create jobs and economic prosperity. Also, and by the way, he's based in Ottawa, in the American Embassy in Ottawa, and also to Ann, District Director here in Connecticut, which just an incredible background, an incredible resume. I was just fascinated by all her work she's done in the energy side and also on the tire side. And to Melissa Grosso, the Senior International Trade Specialist here. I want to thank all of you for the work, because despite our best intentions, we would never have been able to put on an event such as this today. Also want to thank Congressman Joe Courtney. Your words on the importance of this event and of the Canada-Connecticut and broader Canada-U.S. relationship are much appreciated. We are grateful to the Congressman because unlike most of us in the room, I believe, is the only one who puts his name on a ballot and makes personal and family sacrifices to represent our constituencies and our communities. And to our hosts, Shipman and Goodwin, for their gracious hospitality, thank you so much. As Ann mentioned, my name is John Prato, and I'm absolutely honored to be Canada's Consul General in 5 key states here in the United States. I represent New York, Jersey, Delaware, Pennsylvania, and Connecticut. And I feel privileged because I'm working in a country that I respect, admire, and adore, and that's the United States of America. I feel privileged because I'm at the nexus of the most important relationship in the world, the greatest trading relationship in the world, and that is Canada and the US. Let me put it in context what our relationship is. It's a relationship that's the largest trading relationship in the world, just under $700 billion in goods and services. That's $1.8 billion every day, 1.3 million every minute. That's some 10 million trucks crossing our borders, 400,000 people every single day visiting friends and doing business, traveling across our borders. It means 35 of the 50 great states in this country call Canada their #1 export market. Now those are all fascinating statistics, but the one that interests me the most, that I care most about, is that trade with Canada is responsible for 8 million jobs here in the United States. Two-way trade between Connecticut and Canada, but $5.6 billion, responsible for some 90,000 jobs in this state. And the nexus of that relationship is energy. We are the largest suppliers of energy to the United States. #1 in crude oil, #1 in natural gas, #1 in electricity, renewable electricity, because roughly 60% of our electricity production is hydro, and #1 in uranium as well. Now, when you think about energy, you may not think about Connecticut quickly. We beg to differ. The jobs that we can create in this state, tied to environment, engineering, and manufacturing, are much more greater than exist today. And that's why we're here today. We have an incredible, we've been blessed, I should say, in Canada with the 3rd largest oil reservoir in the world, and that's in the oil sands. Some 175 billion barrels, proven. We think it could be even larger. We think it could be the largest reservoir in the world with your help on the technology side. Because the oil sands are not simply an oil reservoir, they're a technology incubator. And we need your technology. So today we have an opportunity for you to meet some of our most outstanding companies. But let me give you some facts. We believe that by 2035, some 465,000 jobs in the United States will be supported by the oil sands. For every 2 jobs in Canada created in the oil sands, 1 will be created in this country. We have a list that we are aware of, well over 1,000 companies in the United States that service the oil sands, that supply the oil sands. To put it in context, in 2011, well over $22 billion of CapEx, capital expenditures, just that year, were spent in the oil sands. This is the largest private sector infrastructure project in the world. The companies you're going to meet today are some of the leading companies. In fact, they are the leading companies in that sector. Now, when I mention these opportunities of 465,000 jobs in the United States, I want to make one point clear. I represent your state. I want to see those jobs here in Connecticut. Your state has a history of advanced manufacturing. And those are the types of jobs, those are the types of skill sets that are required in the oil sands. So I'm very bullish today. You're going to be meeting not only our largest companies, but our companies that have got capital expenditure needs. They're traveling the world for those products. So we think that a matchmaking session is the best way to move forward here today. So I look forward to the matchmaking session later. I believe it will help create genuine opportunities for export from Connecticut to Calgary or to Alberta broadly. And I'd also like to thank again the Department of Commerce for their help and acknowledge their investment champion you'll hear from shortly, Sidra. But first, I'd also like to just mention the companies that are going to be represented here today. And if they could just stand. Jim Paltz from Suncor. Suncor has the distinction of being the largest integrated energy company in Canada. It was also the first in the oil sands in 1967. John Wardrop from Imperial. Imperial Oil's largest shareholder is Exxon, and they've got an incredible project, the Curl Lake project. You've probably seen the ads here run by Exxon on the Curl Lake project. John Hartfort from Canadian Natural Resources, incredible company that has an upgraded Horizon Upgrader plus other operations, both conventional and oil sands. And Stephen Diot from Meg Energy, that is one of the fastest growing oil sand companies that we have. So I wish everybody a great day, a prosperous day, and thank you for coming.
Ask my parents, Charles and Darlene Steffens, to stand up. And come on, man. They are the reason I'm here, but it's for several reasons, because they are really, you can sit down, they're the people who introduced me to Canada. They began taking me to Canada in my father's seaplane up to all kinds of places, Nunavut, Tuktoyaktuk, Old Crow, starting when I was 4 years old. So they really introduced me and gave me my love of Canada. It was also my father's idea. He said, Richard, you know, you really should stop just thinking about Fort McMurray and Calgary. Why don't you go to the Nunavut Gas and Oil Show to find out what's going on up on the Mackenzie River? And I said, that's a wonderful idea. The minute he found out I was going, he said, good, we're coming with you. And so this is, this was on the Christmas card. And this is a nice picture of the, this is Inuvik with the, but no, the church. I'm forgetting what the name of the church is now.
It is Our Lady of the
Yeah, and then we will be in Iqaluit, I think, next June, and then we're figuring out how to get to Whitehorse. But I have, I guess, the 2 points. The first thing was, I told people not to call this the oil sands event. And I said, okay, the oil sands have all kinds of publicity and buzz, but this is really about the Canadian energy market. Because all of the opportunities that you're hearing about in the oil sands, in fact, exactly the same stuff is needed when you're talking about major hydro projects all across Canada. I'm sorry, the Calgary people are all upset, but it's true. Lots of mining projects in British Columbia, northern Quebec. Renewable energy projects really across Canada, especially with the high feed-in tariffs in Ontario. And I will also cite some very interesting offshore opportunities off Baffin Island and up in the Arctic Ocean. So when you're looking at the Canadian market, these are wonderful people, I'm glad they came here, but don't just think Calgary, think Canada as a whole. Look at what they're doing, multiply by 10, that's when you've got Canada. The second point is, when people think about the energy business, many people say, well, I don't make oil derricks or drilling rigs, I don't know why they would want me. But when I talk to people across Canada, they already have drilling rigs. They don't need that. So what do they need? And I would pinpoint, I would say, 6 precise opportunities. And this is in regard to mining projects, hydro projects, oil sands projects, anything. Number 1, how do I make it cleaner? Especially water treatment. I always hear, how do I make the project, the water, cleaner? Number 2, how do I clean it up afterwards? How do I do the environmental remediation? Number 3, how do I use less energy? What energy efficiency technology can I use? Number 4, how do I make it safer? What do I do to enhance worker and job safety? Number 5, where do I get the labor to do all of this? Because there's a continuing skilled labor problem throughout Canada. And number 6, what could I manufacture here in America and put on a giant truck and drive to Calgary so I don't have to manufacture it at very high cost up in Fort McMurray?